Morning. This is a celebration for me to be here with you today, and I'm going to just kind of go in and out of order on this, but Becca, because of your situation, I wanted to share a few comments, and that is I am celebrating 1 year cancer-free. A year ago, on Thursday morning, bright and early, I also had a double mastectomy, and so on January 15th was my surgery. March 30th was my reconstructive surgery. And then we had a little unexpected opportunity that was not related specifically to anything else, but I had a hematoma, a vein ruptured. And so on Good Friday, I got to go back into the hospital for a little emergency surgery. I want to share a couple of things about God's trustworthiness. And if there's anything in my life that I can say the most important lesson that I have learned in that God is faithful, and He is trustworthy in great and small things. And I want to share just a couple of quick stories about my experience that illustrate that trustworthiness. Where should I start? Well, Priscilla and I got acquainted about a year before, a little before your cancer journey, and so she was there for me to help walk alongside me when I needed someone who had been down the path. And it was so neat how God helped us become friends before either one of us knew we were going to be on that journey. So that was a thing that was amazing, how God's timing put that all together. Another thing that happened is I was in my reconstruction plastic surgeon guy's office. You go in there and see him before your surgery also, because they tag team, they work together. And I'm sitting, the waiting room is packed, okay? It's like there's no place to sit, so we go outside and get some fresh air. When I come in and I sit back down, I look across at the sofa, I'm going, gee, that face looks familiar. Turned out she had been a manager in one of my hair salons, and I hadn't seen her in 18 years. Okay, and she is a fabulous woman who was a cornerstone in my business, who I just adored. And she lives in Lompoc, we're busy, we have lives, and we just, hadn't seen each other. And she was sitting in the office. Okay, so that was pretty mind-blowing. Then, a few weeks later, after my surgery, when I came in for an appointment, there was no one in the waiting room, and Tammy was there. And so we got to talk, and it was wonderful. And this was before my reconstruction was finished, so I started kind of panicking right before the reconstruction. Saline, silicone, this, all these choices that you have to make, okay? And the morning that I was kind of panicking about these decisions, I was online, and Tammy happened to be online, Facebook, and we messaged. And she shared with me. And then I made another phone call, and a client/friend of my husband's and ours. Guess what business? She spent her first half of her career in the implant business. And she's super, super busy. She's always gone traveling. And I decided, well, I'm going to take a chance and text her. She was there, and she was free. And she talked with me. So those are some examples of how God is there to meet you when you need Him, and He is faithful in the big things and the small things. And so I just wanted to share a couple of those things with you. And I guess I will share one more, because this one totally blew my mind. And that was the day that the hematoma thing happened. I was doing well. I was actually amazed at how quickly things rebounded. It was really quite amazing. But my friend and housekeeper, Mary Bell, happened to stop by. She was in the neighborhood at another job, and she just came to check on me. And she came in, and we were talking, and suddenly the hematoma happened. And she was there. There was no reason for her to be here. She just was working in the neighborhood and said, I'm going to stop in and see how Michelle's doing. So she was there to call my husband, call the doctor, and be there with me to help me stay calm. And it just kept rolling. We called the doctor. He said, Mark got there. He said, put her in the car and just come to my office. Don't go to the emergency room. So we pull into the parking lot. Dr. Schooler comes out of the office and looks at me in the car. He goes, well, we got to fix this. And he said, don't go to the emergency room. Go over to the admitting. I'm going to call right now. And within 2 hours from the time that the vein thing happened, I was in pre-op for surgery. There was an open surgical suite, and Dr. Schooler had gotten done early that day. So God is amazing. He is amazing. And so those were big things. There were a lot of little things like people's work schedule being that they could just come and hang out and watch a movie, and people in town who usually weren't in town at that time. And then, so it was truly an amazing story. So when we talk about faith and hope and God being trustworthy, in the verse it says, he will do what he has promised. And a life verse for me since college, and I'm not going to tell you how many years that is, Philippians 1:6, for I am confident of this, that he who began a good work in you will bring it to completion in the day of Christ. And probably most of you know that verse well. But that has been one that I've clung to forever. And it certainly has been true in this situation, that he is faithful and he has a plan. And I don't think I would have chosen to include breast cancer in my plan, but the amazing things that are coming out of it, I can honestly say I am grateful. I am grateful for where my life is now. So let's see what we can find on here. I don't know.
You have to turn up
Okay, I'm sorry, I'll talk louder. I was afraid if the mic was on, I'd be blowing you all out of the room, so. Okay. All right, faith, confidence in what we hope for and assurance of what we do not see. When we're on this side of any opportunity or challenge, we don't see. The hope, we have confident expectations. So the theme here, of course, is confidence in God and his faithfulness. And then it brings us to resilience. We all need resilience, regardless of what the challenges we're facing. It's the ability to recover steadily from illness, depression, adversity, or the like, with buoyancy. And I love that word, buoyancy. I mentioned to you the dates earlier, just because it's kind of how I keep track, because I was on so many drugs, I don't remember all of it. So it was actually fun. People said I was a lot more fun. Right, Priscilla? Anyway, but so the surgery was January, reconstruction in March, the other surgery April 30th, and on May 15th, I was at my daughter's college graduation at USC. So I just wanted to share that with you. And because I'm a mom, it gives me a chance to brag about my kids, right? Rick Warren, as you know, wrote the book Purpose Driven Life, and John did a book club, a mini book club this fall, and my husband said, Michelle, let's do this. So I said, hey, yeah, let's do this. I love the book club. So we went through that process, and it's been such a learning, growing experience for me. It's been amazing. But there's another thing that is a big part of my life that I can share from Rick Warren's life experience. He says, experience is not what happens to you, it's what you do with what happens to you. Don't waste your pain. Use it to help others. And another line that's very similar to this that he uses, that out of your greatest ministry comes out of your greatest pain. And I have had another life-threatening challenge in my life, and that's bipolar depression. And so today what I would like to share with you about is how God has taken these different things, the adversities and challenges that I've had in my life, and brought me to a place that actually is bringing dreams come true. And I find it really quite remarkable and astounding how I got to this point. But I'm very grateful. And now I can have the opportunity to live with joyous abandon. And I'm a polar bear freak, so that's why we brought that along. So, let me get a drink here. As many of you probably know, Rick Warren's son, they lost him to suicide in, I think, 2013. And as a result of that, he and Kay Warren, who is also a breast cancer survivor, I found out, I did not know that, have gotten very serious about mental health in the faith community. And they put together an amazing program, and I'm going to share with you one video clip shortly here. But And the other thing in the mental health community that was mentioned in my intro, and that is that I am a certified mental health instructor. I am not a mental health professional. What I am is an advocate and an educator. And if you think about going to a first aid class or a CPR class, that's what mental health first aid is, only for mental health. And so I have the opportunity to use the mental health first aid program, which is a fabulous program, but a secular program. And Saddleback Church, Rick Warren's group, is doing Hope for Mental Health. So when you get to combine the things, it's a lot of wonderful, wonderful resources. And really the objective is to raise community awareness and literacy about mental health, and to reduce the stigma, and to take away the fear. I think the numbers are at 1 in 4 Americans will have a mental health disorder at some point in this year, or in a given year. Okay? And 1 in 10 children suffer from some sort of mental illness, serious mental illness. So probably everybody in this room knows someone, a friend, a family, or maybe yourself. You've experienced some form of a mental health challenge. So I think it's really important that the faith community start having a conversation about this. Don't be afraid to talk about it. It's important, and we're going to help each other and grow together. And it's just so important that God has brought me to a place where I'm using my training experience and my passion for education. And now, not only do I get to share in faith community situations, but a dream come true for me is working in the college community. And we're teaching mental health first aid at UCSB, and we just got invited to teach it at USC. And so once a quarter, we'll be presenting this information for college students. And it's such an important time in their life. Unfortunately, this is also when a lot of mental illnesses present, is in that 18 to 24 age range. The other thing is students are under so much stress, and the anxiety and the depression can really derail them. And early intervention and support is so important because it salvages opportunities. If you crash and burn and have to leave and not complete your college training, that's going to change the course of your life. If we can surround these young people and get them the help and support that they need, or it might be something as simple as a friend who will listen. Listening is probably the biggest gift to any mental health challenge, is someone who cares enough to sit and listen and love you. And so the opportunity to work in the college community is the most exciting thing that I could have asked for. I had no idea it would be talking with them about mental health. I thought it would be business or communications or something like that. Didn't work out that way. So. Stigma. The last great stigma of the 20th century is the stigma of mental health, mental illness. That's what we were talking about. And I just wanted to show you some of the faces of people who are in the public eye, who have been very vocal and very willing to step out and support and say, we need to talk, this needs to happen, we need to focus on this. And I think about the Susan G. Komen movement and the Pink Ribbon movement and what they have done for cancer, and how, you know, at one point, maybe 20, 30 years ago, you didn't even want to say the C word, okay? And now we have navigators and support and all these things. I hope that mental health first aid will help take us to that point someday with mental illness. New York City is going to train 250,000 people in mental health first aid. The mayor, the mayor has, you know, earmarked the funds and set up the program, and their plan is to train 250,000 people in New York City alone for the mental health first aid program. So I find that just fabulously encouraging. I just think, I'm sorry, I keep talking soft because I think the mic's on.
But actually, there's no volume mic, it's only the video.
Oh.
John is gone.
Okay, all right.
I'm so sorry.
Can you hear me, or am I talking too soft? Okay, all right, okay.
Sorry.
No worries, no worries. Okay, so as I said earlier, I'm sure there are people in the room that are mental health professionals, and this will be a review for you, but I want to show you what part of the mental health first aid program is about. Gives you an idea of what we teach when we go out and do our workshops. Mental health disorder or mental illness is a diagnosable illness that affects a person's thinking, emotional state, and behavior. It disrupts a person's ability to work, carry out daily activities, and engage in satisfying relationships. Okay? So I think that's a really tight clean way to just explain this. And that's part of what we're trying to do in the community, is make it accessible, understandable, not this mystery and this thing that's so scary. Okay, table leaders. I think you have a white sheet that says thoughts about mental illness. Do you have any of those at your tables? Okay. It says on the front side, it's got numbers and it says thoughts about mental illness.
Oh, right here.
Okay. Do you have enough for everybody at your table? Or at least to look on with each other? Why don't you pass those around and don't flip them over. No, don't flip them over. Just look at the side with the numbers. Okay, I want you to take it'll take you a minute or 2 minutes at the most. I want you to go through those lists and just check or circle or something, myth or fact, okay?
So we're just doing this?
No, everybody that has one, just quickly go through and just check or circle on those 10 questions, myth or fact. Okay, I'm sure you've had enough time. They're pretty straightforward. I mean, if you haven't gotten through them, it's all right. We're going to go through them together. Sometimes the materials, I think, are a little simplistic and it's a little obvious, but I think, on the other hand, we'd rather go to the person who has the least amount of information to help bring them to, the next level rather than talk to the highest level of information. So real quickly, I'm just going to go through, okay, number 1, myth or fact? Myth. Okay, mental illness is common. Mental health disorders are common actually not only in the United States but internationally. It's estimated that 26% of Americans ages 18 and older, about 1 in 4, will suffer a diagnosable mental illness. So the fact that we've mentioned already is it's common. The next one, I'll just go through these. Number 2, mental illness is not a character flaw. It's caused by genetic, biological, and social environmental issues. I think it's easy to, make it about character. You would never refer to someone as a cancer or a broken leg, and yet we refer to people as depressives and psychotics and all these different words that are out there. And I think it's important to separate that this is an illness, okay? And to treat it as that, it's not a character issue. Now, personalities are different. You might not care for that person socially. You might not go to dinner with them if they were perfectly healthy. But it's important that we not define people by their mental illness. So, were there any on there that people weren't sure about? Oh, another one that I think is important, especially because of what's happened here in Santa Barbara with the shooting at UCSB and some of the other things that we hear about in the press. The press, we get a distorted view that mental health, makes people violent, when in fact the odds are much higher that someone who has a mental health problem, when you think about the folks out on the street, for one major one, are more likely to be a victim of violent crime than to commit a violent crime. And the press, of course, we hear about the tragedies and the horrific ones that where violence is being committed by the mentally ill person, but that is not typically the case. The other one, number 8, people who talk about suicide don't mean it, they just want attention. In our training, this is one that we spend actually kind of a lot of time doing some exercises on, because suicidal thoughts and talking about suicide generally are a plea for help. And we need to encourage a suicidal person to talk about their thoughts and feelings without judgment or criticism. And I hope you never have to have that situation, but I have had to talk to people about suicide. And it's something that you need to be very direct about. Are you feeling like killing yourself? Do you have a plan? Do you have what it takes to accomplish your plan? And those are hard questions. And one of the things that Mental Health First Aid tries to do is help people be prepared for that, because hopefully you'll never be put in that situation. But if you are, wouldn't you want to have the tools and the words and the thoughts to really deal with that? I have to be honest with you, I have been to that place. And bipolar depression can be very severe. And at a time when I had children in elementary school, my depression had gotten to the point where I was absolutely convinced that my family and the world would be better off without me. And it isn't that you want to kill yourself, but you want the pain to stop. And the emotional pain and the self-loathing, I think that's really where I had gotten to. The self-loathing is so intense that I just wanted it to stop. And one day I drove into my garage and realized that all I had to do was close the door and leave the car running, and I could end the pain. That's a pretty scary place to get to. And thank God in His grace, He reminded me that I had 2 beautiful children and a family who loved me and friends, and that I couldn't do that to them. But not only that, God still loved me. And I am so thankful to say that I have been healthy for 9 years after taking an aggressive approach. 9 years ago, I chose to have ECT, electroconvulsive therapy. It's the scary thing that everybody talks about, shock treatment. You know, one flew over the cuckoo's nest. Well, guess what? It's not quite like that anymore. I'm happy to say. And it was a very aggressive, scary choice. And you know what? I got my life back. I got my life back. And after years of medication failures and the roller coaster of depression and health and depression and health, I said, I can't do this anymore, Lord. I can't do this anymore, Lord. And I don't want to close the garage door. So that's what we did. So if you ever have a situation where someone is struggling to that point, please don't run away. Don't be frightened. Just tell them how much you care and listen. You know, listen. So let's see what we have next. Stigma is actually one of the biggest barriers to people actually going out and getting treatment. And nobody wants to admit it. Nobody wants to wear a sign. You know, it's like the AIDS, you know. Nobody wants to, again, be defined by their mental illness. So unfortunately, stigma is a big barrier, and that's one of the other reasons that I want to get out in the community, because if we can bring that down to where people can have a conversation about it, maybe we can get those people into treatment or into a support group or whatever their need is to help them through this. We certainly would take our friend to the doctor if they have diabetes. We would certainly take them if they have a broken leg. So we need to support each other and bring the stigma down so that we can do that. Okay. So mental health first aid is the help offered to a person developing a mental health problem or experiencing a mental health crisis. The first aid is given until appropriate treatment and support are received or until the crisis resolves. Sometimes, as I said, it's as simple as someone's had, something has happened in their life that sort of tipped their boat a bit, and they just need someone to love them and listen. Other times, we need to connect them with professional care to whether it's medication or therapy or all of the above. We need to be willing to help them make that connection. Most people are more likely to seek treatment if someone they trust and love helps them make that decision. And you know, there's so much to go into, and I have such a short time, I'm not going to get off too far on that. But so the goal of mental health first aid, as I said earlier, is to teach members of the public how to respond to a mental health emergency, offer support to someone who appears to be in emotional distress or facing a mental health challenge, and reduce stigma and improve the community mental health literacy. So that's what mental health first aid is about. I am going to try to play the video now. And, okay. Oh, Jono promised me this would work. It's working.
My greatest struggle is that I'm bipolar type 2. I tend to be depressed.
Yeah.
I was a normal junior high kid. I tended to get along and fit in high school. I fit in really well, but somewhere towards the end of my high school time, I started to notice I was depressed. I had no reason to be depressed. I wasn't going through a breakup. My family was still intact. In fact, I even found Jesus, and everything seemed to be going right, minus I would go to school and act normal and come home and feel terrible. And it wasn't until around the age of 20 that my mom and my girlfriend, who had noticed a big change in me, started telling me that I needed to go to the doctor and talk to them about it. And I will never forget when, after tests and after some discussion, hearing the words that I was diagnosed bipolar type 2. And my first thought was how embarrassing. I kept it a secret because when I was a kid, I heard the whispers of our neighbor who battled mental illness. Depressed. He was suicidal. A couple times he tried to take his own life. And I remember hearing the jokes that were told about him, hearing minor things that were said about him, and I just didn't want that to be said about me. The doctors kind of reassured me that this was going to be treated like any other illness. There's medication. And once we find the right combination of medications, I'd be able to live a normal life. For me, the most difficult piece was being diagnosed and not knowing anyone in the church that struggled with it. I didn't know one other person, one other leader, one other member, one other volunteer, pastor, anyone that had struggled with it. And so I felt very alone and isolated. I knew I was called to serve God. I knew from church that I was called to do something, but I kept thinking, how could God ever use someone that's bipolar? How would God ever use me when I battle what I battle? And it wasn't until I opened up to some pastors and shared what was going on that they were able to minister to me and encourage me on this calling God had put on my life to serve others. And they had actually pushed, and as they ministered to me, it empowered me to minister to other people as well. I think now, being a part of a church that is talking about it, it's enabled me to share my story, and not only has that been beneficial to those that are sharing the same story as me, it's been beneficial to me because I found I'm not alone. I'm not on an island by myself. I'm actually going through this with many people. And as we've learned to journey together, it's made my journey a lot easier, a lot simpler to do. You can fight this on your own to some degree, but you're going to lose the battle. Sure, there might be stigmas. Sure, some people might not understand or might not know what you're going through. But the good far outweighs the bad. And the help and the hope you get from seeing other people carry you through the weak times is one of the best things that God has gifted us with. I wish, whether in the church or out of the church, whether you lead a church or don't lead a church, that people would be more outspoken about it, that they would create a space that is safe for people to share who they are, because I think people would be shocked how many people struggle with mental illness. And I think once the space is created for someone to be able to share, it not only frees that person up of the burden, but it helps provide a space for a community to come together in ways like we've never seen before. What gives me hope is knowing that I won't spend eternity like this. Knowing that one day I will stand in heaven perfect, made whole by Jesus. What also gives me hope is my family and my kids, knowing that I need to stay strong and I need to stay connected because I care and love them deeply. And getting to watch them and getting to see them grow and getting to demonstrate to them what it means to be sick and to battle an illness in a God-honoring way is important to me.
He said it so much better than I could have. And to know that we will be healed and whole, whatever our battle is the hope. It is a great hope. And just to share so that I don't want this to be a downer. This is about recovery, okay? This is about hope, recovery, and God's plan for your future. And whether it's in this life or the next, God has a plan for us, and He has promised to work it out in us until He returns or until we join Him. And so here's some faces of hope. Hope says you are loved. Hope says you are needed. Hope says you have a purpose. And that saved my life. That I knew I was loved, I was needed, and God had a purpose that wasn't finished yet. So celebrate life, love, and hope in mental health. We know that in all things, God works for the good of those who love Him, who have been called according to His purpose. Not all things are good, but God will work through it all. He will work through it all. One of the other advocacy groups in mental health is called the Semicolon Project. And it says, and it uses this idea that a semicolon is used when a sentence could have ended, but it wasn't. My story isn't over yet. Thanks. I think a somewhat unusual story is I'm the one who knew that I didn't want to live like I was living. And so I was the person who really was out trying to find doctors, trying to find help. But the key that started this is my journey began with postpartum depression with both my children. And then the second child, that just didn't go away, and it moved into clinical depression. I checked myself into UCLA and was diagnosed with bipolar 2, which is, the more severe with depression as opposed to mania. So the answer is both. A dear friend of mine who I call my West Coast mom, I went through 2 really tough pregnancies. I had hyperemesis the whole way through. It was very difficult. And so I was already very depleted when I was going into parenthood, very depleted, very fragile, and so I was a prime candidate for the postpartum depression. And so the first time, nobody even knew what it was then. Nobody even had language for that. So the second time around, my West Coast mom took me to lunch, and she's just the most gracious, loving, wonderful person, and she handed me a little brochure. And it talked about postpartum depression, and I went, oh my goodness, there's my life. So yes, someone reached out to me in a loving, caring way, but then after that, I was on a mission. It's like, I need to fix this. But it's been a 20-year journey. So along the way, there's been a lot of help and support, but that was my story.
Do you run into any situations where the person isn't maybe they're self-aware, but they're not expressing that, but others?
Mm-hmm. That probably is that's probably a more typical scenario.
How do you care, I guess?
Right. I think kind questions, like observations. I've noticed this. People would say, you're not yourself, you're not your old self. Where's the bubble and the spark and the this and that, So again, I'm not the healthcare professional. There's people here I would totally defer to answer those kind of questions, and most of them are at your tables. So, I guess what I would say is the thing that people who are struggling with mental health probably most want to know is that you care, and that you'll listen, and that you'll walk with them. And if someone is still resistant, which is often the case, then it is more challenging, but you do just have to reach out and say, this is what I'm seeing, this is what I'm noticing, and I love you and I want more for you. I want, instead of, making it a negative thing, it's like, I want more for you. I want your dreams to come true. I want your health and your hope, rather than just focusing on what the crisis is or the negative behaviors. But again, that's coming from lived experience. That's not coming from the mental health professional side. So.
Do you have anything to add to that? I don't know.
You did a great job. I would just add to reassure people that it's treatable. Mental health issues are treatable. Depression, anxiety, psychosis, we have skill and resources now, medication and therapy, that you're not stuck in it.
Yeah.
What's the difference between chronic depression and bipolar depression?
Great question. They thought I was just clinically depressed initially, but when I started on medication, for example, Zoloft is one of the medications that I use, and it immediately triggered sort of this manic thing. I couldn't sleep, I couldn't eat, I was, and so hypomania is part of the differentiation between clinical depression and bipolar. To be bipolar, you have to have had at least one episode of mania. And with bipolar 2, fortunately, the mania is more manageable. Bipolar 1, it can be much more severe and include sometimes psychosis. It can be extreme. So my situation is depression, the more dangerous part of my disorder, but I have had a manic episode which moved me into that other category. And my response to medications sort of was what told them this isn't just straight up depression. Great question. Thank you.
Well, I might need to talk to you on a much deeper level.
Sure.
But my mother suffered suffers from chronic depression, and she lives in Goleta, and I'm constantly trying to help her figure out how to get her out and out of her shell. And it really happened. My dad died suddenly behind the wheel of a massive heart attack at 47, and she was in the vehicle with him. And she has never been able to move on. And she goes in and out of just crying spells, and she's a petite little French-Italian woman that is so feisty and has so much to give, but she stops herself in living, and she quit living that day on May 31st, 1992, was the end of her life, essentially. And so I'm an only child, and so I carry her weight on me every day, all the time. And so I'm constantly, and to the point where my husband's like, when are you just going to give up? She's got to help herself. You can lead her to water, but enough already. Because I spend so much of my energy trying to get her involved or do this or do that. And she's slowly starting to do things. And I force my children on her because at least when she's watching my kids, she doesn't have time to be depressed, and she adores them. So, you know, I'm like, oh, Mom, gotta help me today. You know, I need you to have these children. And so, you know, it helps her, but I need to talk to you or what I can do. I mean,
I think what comes to mind right away is two things. How beautiful that you would be willing to share that in this group, that you feel safe enough and accepted enough that it's okay to share that. So thank you. That's the first thing. Secondly, because I am not the mental health professional, what I would say to you is make sure that you're getting the support that you need. Okay? The caregivers and our family and our spouses or partners, it's not easy for them either. You know? And so I understand that, you know, I had a lot of anger and resentment because I felt I'd been abandoned, okay, in this many times. But I have to realize that I was not the only person hurting, you know. And so those of you who have family or friends that do have mental health challenges, you need to get the support and the care that you need to walk through this, because you're right. Until she's ready to get healthier and do some of the things that it takes to happen, it may not. And unfortunately, she has that choice. But there's a lot of mental health professionals in the room, so for that part, I would defer to them. But from my side, make sure that they're taking care of you. So.
Michelle, is there a local training for mental health first aid?
Yes, as a matter of fact, there is.
You sound like
yeah, there's a few different ways that you can participate in a mental health first aid training. The Mental Wellness Center here in Santa Barbara is a local nonprofit who does amazing, wonderful things for the mental health community. And they have about 6 of them a year, and I think I'm going to be helping with one of the trainings on February 20th. They'll have a few during the year. Any group can request a mental health trainer to come in and teach for any group. I'm one of the trainers, but there are many, and so any group that would like someone to come in and train, it typically is an 8-hour class, which is a long class. You know, it can be broken into 2 4-hour segments. It's designed that you can do that, or someone like me can come in and do a little mini intro to the group, you know, a half hour or an hour, and then they can choose whether they want to go further with it. So, Carrie, did you have?
Yeah, I was just curious, do you have like flare-ups that you actually need to maybe change your medicine, or do you do more social interactions with friends and prayer and meditation with God? And
All of the above, thank you. Do it all. Anything that works, do it all. My situation is that, you know, I spent, 12 years with the roller coaster of medication failure, changing medications. I've been in therapy. I still have a therapist. I don't see her every week, but when I need to go in and talk to her, I do. You know, so all of the above. Health, you know, your exercise, your diet, all those things are going to influence your mental well-being. So yes to that. Yes, I'm still on medication, but a very small amount. Especially, I found a list of what I was on maybe 10 years ago before I had ECT, and I was like, whoa, how was I functioning? You know, I was like, whoa. And now I'm on Zoloft and Lamictal. It's a small amount, and it's working beautifully, but the reason is I did the ECT. My grandmother had ECT in the 60s, and I don't think that was probably as piece of cake as mine was. She had seasonal affect disorder. Okay, in the fall she would get very depressed, and I don't know how they managed to do this, but they treated my grandmother. She had ECT, one treatment, and she did not have to do it again. Now that is not always the case. I need to be candid with that, as some people have it yearly, some people, nobody's case is exactly the same. But when we talk about openness and communicating, how fortunate am I that my family talked about that enough, not a lot, but at least I was aware of the fact that my grandmother had ECT and had been incredibly effective. So that gave me the courage to say, you know what, I'm going to try that, and it gave me my life back. So yes, I'm on some medication, yes, I see a therapist, friends, prayer, all of it is helping me stay healthy. Yeah.
Well, I think this is really inspirational. As a therapist, I have over the years seen how overburdened the county mental health is.
Absolutely.
There's a lot of homeless people where it's usually a very big part of what
Yes.
is going wrong for
Yeah.
them. And I just think this is the answer. We need an army of people who are knowledgeable and not shunning what's going on, but inviting conversation.
And if I can interrupt on that for just a minute, I want to just second that hugely. I was on the Mental Health Commission for 4 years, and the public sector is completely overwhelmed. There's never going to be enough money. There's never going to be enough psychiatrists and resources, unfortunately. Okay, the private sector can't do it alone. The church can't do it alone. But together, if we get everybody working together, we're going to cover a much bigger chunk of it. So I want to encourage the faith community. I will talk to anybody who will listen. So back to what Priscilla's saying, whether it's a business, a private sector, a public sector, or a faith community, we need to do what Ruth is saying. So, Becca, go ahead.
No, I just wanted to know where would I start? Like, who do I go to talk to get, it's overwhelming.
Yes, it is overwhelming.
So
yes. Do you want to make a comment to that or no?
It's tough.
No. Yeah. Go ahead.
There's a NAMI.
Oh, absolutely. Thank you. Yes. Yes.
I've been thrown, and you never know when you're going to need. I was in Canada on vacation, and a woman went completely manic in the grocery store, and they were calling the police, and it was getting really hugely bad. But when they're gone, when they are in a manic state, and she was schizophrenic, she was going out of her mind, and just attacking people almost, and you don't face them.
Right.
And it's the thing you learn that you go to the side of them. And you talk to them. And I talked to her very quietly and very calmly and told her, they have called the police, this is going to escalate, and try to calm them down. So you never know when you're going to need this.
And that's where the mental health first aid part comes in. It's can you deal with the situation? But NAMI, N-A-M-I.
And they are free of charge. I've answered phones. I've helped people through things. And so that is the first place to start, because they will help you and partner with you.
And we have a strong NAMI organization here in Santa Barbara. Are you local or are you from? Okay. Okay. And that's based through the Mental Wellness Center here in Santa Barbara.
Do they, in my mom's case, I think it's more like, PTS, where she relives that incident
Right.
over and over and over.
Well, I think that NAMI would be for you, to help support you. It's called Family to Family is the program, and that will help you understand what the resources are. But I think that talking to one of our local professionals, therapists or counselors, doctors, social workers would help you get a plan and help you find out what the resources are in Santa Barbara. So, but the Mental Wellness Center downtown is a great place to start, and afterwards we'll connect you up with somebody who can give you more information. Okay. Anything else before we wrap up? I think we're running tight on time here.
Quick,
Yes.
what age, you said about mental health training, so my son is 15, he goes around with a lot of group of other teenagers, and serves the homeless, goes to rescue mission, and so he interacts with that. What age can you start equipping, and is there somebody that can then come into the school to teach these kids that are going out and reaching out?
Yeah. yes to all of that, I guess. One of the things, I am not certified in the youth program, but there is a mental health first aid for youth that's totally geared for that age group, that they could go through that. And it's the kind of thing where community service, you could do a community service project and they could probably get their hours for that. So there are definitely some ways that we can do that. And so we could talk more about that afterwards, but yes, that would be an awesome
What
thing.
age could you start equipping?
Oh,
Like, what do
okay,
you think?
okay.
Yeah.
I think that it's conversational, wait a minute, I have a much better answer for you. Mental Health Matters is a program that Ann Lippincott is doing in the schools, okay, starting with 6th grade. And they do this for the 6th graders, okay, they come in 5 times, I think, and then now, I guess, in 8th grade or 9th grade, testing isn't the right word, but to find out how much information they retain. So 6th grade is when they're introducing it to the elementary schools now, and they've been in, I don't know, I think they've presented it to maybe 600 kids over the last couple of years, okay? So elementary school, 6th grade is when they're kind of able to start getting their head around it, I think. And then revisit in high school, so. I'll stay around if you have anything else you want to talk to me about, and I think I'll say thank you and goodbye.
Thank you.